And today we are joined with our amazing guest host, DarcieAdler. Welcome to the room, everyone. Welcome, Darcie.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm seeing all my friends pop up. Everybody showed up for me. It's so sweet.
What are you been doing to help keep you sane and not like stressed out and stay?
Yeah,
Mhm.
great question. I have been walking and sprinting. That's kind of my new thing. I've been walking now for a couple years, and I have to get my walk in every day. But I've found that if I can get my heart rate up, I'm not like a runner, so I don't go for like a 4 mile run or anything like that. But I'll go on my walk to get my 10,000 steps, and periodically I'll sprint to get my heart rate up. And I find that that is a huge help with my stress load. Something about getting that heartbeat going and the breathing going, it really dials down that stress for me. So that's been great. And continuing with, I do a little yoga every morning. I do about 15 minutes of yoga. So it's just real quick, just stretching my body out, and about 15 minutes of meditation. And that routine usually gets me back to neutral.
Good. That's good to hear. So good to know. Thank you for that heads up. Definitely making some moves to put things in place to protect myself. But this, for me, has been a hell of a ride. It's only Wednesday, and I'm like waiting for the week to be over. This week was actually kind of not every week is great, and I feel like I need a clone because I need to be at like 2-3 places at one time, and it can be overwhelming. So honestly, I think one of the things for me that I did this week that was like my wellness was I had to cry. And I know that might sound weird, but sometimes just like a release to let go of all of the stress you feel can
Yeah,
be helpful.
absolutely.
And I felt that feeling of like holding my breath because
Mm.
was carrying so many things, and just sometimes crying is like a sense of like just the sigh and the relief. So that to me was needed. And just say, you know what, just keep going. You're almost there. You know, just keep pushing through. So that's kind of was.
Yeah, good for you. And I think it's so great that you're talking about that, because I think so often we're all afraid to be vulnerable, right? We have so much we're working towards, and we're trying to be the best at what we're trying to do, right? In our individual creative paths. And I think it's sometimes hard to admit that we're struggling. And so for you to, talk about the fact that you were able to put yourself in a vulnerable place and allow yourself to cry and share that is pretty amazing, I think. And it can be extremely
So without
healing.
further ado, welcome, Darcie. Welcome. Please tell everyone a little bit about yourself. And then I really want to kind of touch in on some of the topics today and your journey to your wellness as being a creative and an entrepreneur for the over 30 years.
Yeah, 30
No,
years is
I'm not
right.
saying
It's a
over, but
long
just 30 years.
time. Yeah, a long, long time. It's like a little bit, it kind of kills me when I think about how long it's been going on. But yeah, so I started off this whole creative journey as a photography student. I was going to be a photographer. I went to a school called Portfolio Center. Some of you will be familiar with that. It was bought out by Miami School of Art a few years ago, so it's no longer in existence. But that is really where I got my footing and where I fell in love with our industry. Felt so lucky. I was not a good student in school. I was very ADD and couldn't get my footing. Did poorly in school, and so when I got to Portfolio Center, I really figured out where my talent was, and they had it set up so that there was, every semester they would do an award ceremony for the whole school. So there were art directors, graphic designers, copywriters, photographers, illustrators, and they would do this big, that have everybody go into the auditorium. And the first year I would just kind of watch everybody go up and get their awards. And by the time I hit the second year, I was like, I was shining. I was like, which was an amazing thing. I'm saying it because at that time in life, I really needed to shine because had low self-esteem, and I didn't really know what I was going to do in life, and because of the ADD, I just didn't feel very smart, and so it was really cool to hear your name get called and go to the front and pick up an award, and that became routine for me. So that was awesome, and that's where I really started to feel like I belonged somewhere. So really good memories from there. I got out of there and I became a studio manager for a husband and wife duo who were just finding their success, Liz and Jeff Von Haney. This was back, I think, in like '93. And they, were shooting film, and I was their studio manager, which I really had no business being a studio manager. Jody will attest to that. Because it's like kind of doing production, and that's keeping track of all the details, and that was not where my strengths were. So regardless, it was not my favorite job, but it gave me a really good overview of how the industry is run, how things work, and that's been really helpful for me, along with my degree in photography, to be able to communicate with people in our industry. And so from there, I became a wardrobe stylist and a still life prop stylist, an interior stylist, a set designer, an art director, an interior designer, an agency founder, creative director, business owner, and boss. So it's been a lot of different roles, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think it came from, as a creative, I think most of you will attest to this, we get bored easily. So it's like you kind of master something and you're like, okay, what's next? It's like, I did that, I learned that, I loved that. Now I'm not as in love with it because I know it's coming every day and I'm ready for what's next. So that's what I did over the last 30 years, was kind of always evolve into the next step. And I'm really grateful for it. I tell a lot of creative people, like, whatever it is you're doing today, don't feel like you're going to be locked into that. I mean, I think a lot of us had parents who would, go to work for a company, and at least my generation, our parents would go to work at companies and they would stay there for their entire lifetime until they retired. And that's just not the case anymore, and especially for creatives. Like, you can reinvent yourself, 5, 10 times over. So that's the joy of it. And but yeah, so that's a little bit about my history.
That's a really interesting point that you said about like continuing to reinvent yourself as a creative, because I feel that when I came out of school, I was so hungry and ready to do everything. You know what I mean? I was juggling like 9 different roles, and my friends were always like, dude, you are the yes man. Like, you're always saying yes. Like, when are you going to sleep? When are you going to catch a beat? And so I kind of have tapered off of certain roles and focused in on like what I'm most focused on at this moment. But I'm consistently kind of fantasizing about like, well, what about if I want to do sports chiropractic? What about if I want to become that veterinarian? What about if I do want to like start my own production company? And it's nice to hear you encourage the community to do that, or to continue to explore like what other roles that you might have set for yourself and what other goals you might have for yourself, because you don't have to stay in one specific thing. So
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I might. There's somebody that's with us here, and I hope she won't be too annoyed with me when I bring her up. But Allie Harper, she's a really great example of somebody who switched gears. She switched gears a couple of times, and maybe if she's comfortable enough to come forward, she could talk about it a little bit. But she was an art director, graphic designer, art director, and now she's an incredibly successful photographer. She had taken some time off in between those two roles and she was a coach, like a health and wellness coach. And then she had done some photography, took a little break when she had her son, did the health gig, and then went back into photography. And she's finding a ton of success now. Allie, any chance you want to talk? You can raise your hand if you want to talk.
Darcie,
right.
you're so funny. Hi.
Hi, Allie. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, guys. It's with y'all. This is awesome. This is so awesome. Yeah, no, changing gears and roles. Thank God for it, right? I mean, and I think about that a lot because I think if I hadn't have if I hadn't had the 10 years as a graphic designer or creative director, I wouldn't have the differentiator that I am now as a photographer, if that makes sense. So, like, I just feel like it builds, it builds, it builds, it builds. There's never a wrong path. Even when I did the health coaching, I thought that was like ridiculous. I look back at that and I'm like, why did I do that for 2 years? It's insane. But then I know it taught me how to talk to people. It taught me how to listen to people in a better way. It taught me how to prioritize my health. It taught me so many things. So, yeah, roads that diverge are good.
Allie, when you
Yeah,
decided
for
to go into being a health coach or into any of these number of roles that you've mentioned, did you completely say, okay, like I'm going into it 100% and I'm not going to focus on anything else? Or did you find yourself freelancing and juggling multiple different roles throughout those?
I'm usually an all in person. I have a really hard time otherwise, but they were a little more fluid. You know, when I was a creative director, I was directing other photographers and sort of just found myself doing that more and more and then wanting to step away. So it went from, full time, this is what I'd be doing for the rest of my life, to part time, to then starting my own business. So it was gradual for sure. The other phase of the health coaching coming out of, doing photography and then becoming a mother, I would have to say that was more of a door closing and then opening, mainly because of motherhood. So I think you get thrown for a loop there. That was a little bit harder pill to swallow, to be honest. But, you know, the door opened back up when I was ready. So you just don't ever, you just keep it a little more fluid.
absolutely. I think that's awesome about keeping it fluid and just kind of going with the flow. There
Right.
was something that you mentioned about building and how everything you do kind of builds and builds and builds. I want to tap into the conversation about like building a career and how, as creatives, we feel like there's a particular peak that we're supposed to reach, that's supposed to make us happy, or a particular point or level where we feel like we've achieved something. And then what happens when you reach that level? How do you as a creative like decide to take the next step, or how to reevaluate your happiness to make the next move and to go into something else? So Darcy, I want to start with you on that question, because you have played so many different roles, and still, like, how did you kind of handle reaching different levels of different within your industry?
I'm super goal oriented, and I think because I had those years where I was sort of so lost and not a good student and didn't really have a lot of self esteem. Once I found my footing, I kind of got addicted to it, and it was kind of like, what's next, and how am I going to get there? So, I love growth, and so that gives me a lot of joy. But what I did find is that I'd be so focused on sort of like that next goal that I would sometimes not allow myself to feel all the joy I could be feeling in the moment. And so I spent a lot of years sort of chasing after what was next. And that is one thing that I'd like to just sort of say as like the wisdom of a 50 plus 51-year-old. I'll be 52 next month. I really feel like I've gained some wisdom, and how important it is to understand that we're all innately made to be happy right now, here where we are, and to let ourselves be happy in all the ridiculousness of it, right? Like, allow ourselves to find joy in the fact that we're, racing home, if it's possible, right? If we're racing home from a tough job that we've been on for a week or two, to do this clubhouse that we've created, this whole program that we've created, and we're feeling stressed and strung out, whatever. If we can stop and say, oh my God, look at me, what I'm doing, like, hey, at least I'm trying something new and I'm really spreading my wings, and be proud of yourself and find some joy in that crazy moment, because
But
Wow, you're doing amazing things. I must say, Mo and Ely, you guys are doing amazing things,
that
right? Good for you guys.